What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the show. So today we're going to take a look at the COLA for 2026. We'll take a look at some of the latest projections, and this is the month. So July, August, and September, these are the 3 months that they will use to calculate COLA. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. And then I'm going to talk about the CPI-E versus the CPI-W. I know I've talked about this before, but I want to give you the full details when it comes to the calculation that they currently use, the CPI-W, and compare that to the CPI-E. And I'll show you with the CPI-E, you'll see an increase to your COLA benefits in 2026 if Congress can approve that and move that forward. And this is one of those things that's not hard to do, but Congress just hasn't taken it up yet. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. But first off, you guys can do me a favor. If you want to send me an email, you can at thetecshow.com. So if you have a question, if you have a link to a video or a link to an article, go ahead and send me that via email. Okay, so I have a few illustrations to show you guys today. Now, the 2026 COLA forecast breakdown. So what we're looking at here is we have the Senior Citizens League. They have a projection. Their projection is 2.5%. So we have Market Watch. That is an online news outlet, and they have a projection at 2.5%. We have NAPA. They have a projection of 2.5%. So we see a pattern here. Okay, so we're seeing 2.5% pretty much across the board when it comes to the projections. So we could see something very close to that 2.5%, if not 2.5%. So it could be the same as it was last year. Okay, now I want to talk about this because this is the timeline. This is what we're going to be looking at as far as the timeline. I already talked about July through September, so they're going to take these 3 months, and then they will use the CPI-W in order to calculate what COLA will be. We'll find that information out in October. Usually it's the second week of October, and I'll be here. I'll let you guys know what that information looks like. We're also going to look at each month. So each month when the scores come in, when the CPI-W comes in, I'm going to let you know what that CPI-W is, and we can talk a little bit about that. By the time we get to late September, we'll have a good idea of what COLA is going to look like because we'll have 2 months already, because we'll have July and we'll have August. So we'll only need to fill in September, because in the second week of September, that's when we'll get information on August. And remember, they're a month behind. So in July, right now, we're going to get that information in August. And then in September, we're going to get the information for August. And so that will give us pretty much a good idea of what COLA is going to look like. And we'll come back to the projections as well. And I like to do a projection on my own, but it'll give us a pretty good idea of what we're going to be looking at in October. Remember, October, second week of October, that's when we'll get the information. Now, bringing us back to our chart here, in January, that's when COLA takes effect. Now, for people who are receiving SSI, you're going to receive it in December, so the very, very end of December. And it always works out that way because January 1st is a holiday, so they have to send you out your increase before January. Okay, so now I want to talk about the CPI-W compared to the CPI-E. So the CPI-W, that's for wage earners and clerical staff, and the CPI-E, that is for the elderly. Now, when we're looking at COLA, what they're using right now is the CPI-W. So they're using the CPI, so the Consumer Price Index for wage earners and clerical staff. And so why would they do that if this is a COLA increase for people receiving Social Security benefits? And a lot of those people receiving Social Security benefits are seniors. Seniors spend differently than a person who is, wage earner, clerical staff. So people who are working on a day-to-day. And I want to show you too, I'll show you an outline of how they do the percentages so you get a better idea of what they're taking, how they're weighing the different percentages. But first off, So first off, this is what they're using. This is what they should be using. Okay, and this is the reason why they should be using it. It's tailored more for seniors. And Congress has been talking about this for a while. At least you have some members of Congress that have been talking about, look, we need to change COLA. We need to change it to the CPI-E and stop using the CPI-W. So this is something it's not new. All they need to do is introduce it. You need to have a proposal that's introduced in Congress, and then they can move this through Congress. And this would help. This would definitely help some seniors receiving benefits. Okay, so I want to move forward. Now, this table is showing us over the years what COLA looks like and what it could have looked like if it was a CPI-E. So here's the CPI-W, here's the CPI-E, and then here's the difference. Okay, so 2028. Okay, so 2018, we saw a COLA of 2%. With the CPI-E, COLA would have been 2.1%. Now, I know you're looking at this and you're saying, well, this is, I mean, we're talking about 0.1%. That's really not that much. But if you're taking 0.1% one year, then 0.2% another year, 0.1% another year, if you're seeing a difference like that, over time, like over a 10-year span, you're looking at a pretty decent increase overall. Now, remember, the reason why COLA exists is to keep up with inflation. Okay, that's the reason that they have this COLA increase every year. And so it's not there to give you a big boost to your benefits, but it's there to keep up with inflation. The problem is the current calculations, they're not keeping up with inflation. And so they need to make some adjustments. Okay, so as we stated, it would be 0.1%. So 2019, we're looking at 1.6%. That is the CPI-W, so that's what it was. 1.7% is what it could have been with CPI-E. That's another 0.1%. In 2020, we saw CPI-W at 1.3%. CPI-E would have shown 1.4%, and we would have seen a 0.1% increase or difference between them. 2021, CPI-W, 5.9%. CPI-E would have been 6.1%, and we would have been looking at 0.2% there. 2022, CPI-W was at 8.7%. CPI-E was at 9%. The difference there was 0.3%. And then in 2023, we saw CPI-W at 3.2%. CPI-E would have been 3.4%. And then we would have seen a 0.2%. Now, what I was trying to say is if you add all these up over the years, you're going to get to a point where that increase is going to be pretty significant. It might be $10 here, $20 there. But if you're looking here over the last 6 years, this is a pretty significant difference here. Okay, now I want to show you the comparison between the expenditure. So basically, think of it this way. And I always like to say this when we're talking about CPI and CPI-W, CPI-E. Basically, what the federal government is doing is they're taking just think of a shopping cart full of different items, okay? Items from different categories. And they're tracking the spending on those items. And that's how they're figuring out what COLA looks like. Now, when you're using the CPI-W compared to the CPI-E, they weigh them differently. Okay, so one category like housing could be weighed more heavily for the CPI-W than it is for the CPI-E. And that is based on the CPI. So for wage earners and clerical staff, CPI-W, that's one category. They're going to say, okay, well, maybe they would spend more in housing. And then when you look at the CPI for the elderly, maybe they don't spend as much in housing. So they'll change the percentages. So let me show you what I'm talking about here. So we have the CPI-W here, CPI-E here, and then here's the difference between the CPI-W and the CPI-E. And so when it comes to housing, we see the percentage that they're using is 39.3%. That's for the CPI-W. When we look at the CPI-E, it's at 44.3%. The difference there is plus 5% for the CPI-E. And so in that category right there, when they're doing the CPI every month, the CPI-E is reflecting that higher percentage, which means that if it costs more to rent a place, if it costs more to buy houses, then the CPI-E would benefit you more in that situation. And there are a lot of different factors that come in when it comes to this. I mean, if you think about the CPI-W, you're talking about people of all ages. So some people might be 25, 26. They might still be living at home. They might not be paying rent at all. Or they might have an apartment or even a house, but they're staying there with other people and they're all sharing rent and stuff like that. So when we're looking at this, generally, seniors are, if they're renting a place, they're renting a place on their own. If they are living somewhere, they're more likely to own a house. So things like that. So they weigh a little bit heavier. Okay, now let's look at transportation. So when we're looking at transportation, we have 17.3% for the CPI-W and then 14.3% for CPI-E. So the CPI-W is weighed a little bit heavier there. Now, think about this. When it comes to CPI-W, you're talking about wage earners and you're talking about clerical staff. So these people probably work every day, right? 40 hours a week. generally, not all of them, but I'm just saying if you're looking at the wage earners and clerical staff, most likely they're working every day, and they're probably not. Some of them might be working from home, but you guys get the point. Now, when it comes to the elderly, transportation is not going to be as significant as someone who works every day, because you might have transportation, you might use transportation, buses, trains, metro, all of that, but you're probably not using it on a daily basis if you are elderly. Okay, food and beverage. So we have CPI-W at 15.2%. CPI-E at 13.5%. I don't really understand this. I mean, we all eat. So food and beverage, I would think maybe here it's a little bit, they weigh it a little bit more heavily, just because if you are working, you might be eating out a little bit more. You might be going out to bars and things like that and spending more money. But generally, I would think that they should be weighed about the same. But nonetheless, that's the way they weigh these. Okay, medical care. So medical care, we have 8.3%. That's for the CPI-W. And we have 12%. That's for the CPI-E. I would think that should be even higher, because they should weigh that percentage a little bit higher. But that's just my opinion. When you start getting older, of course, you're going to go to the hospital more. You're going to see your doctor more. And so those costs will go up. Recreation, 5.7% for the CPI-W, and then you have 5% for the CPI-E. And then education and communication, 6.6% for CPI-W, 4.9% for the CPI-E. And you just look here, probably you have, if you're wage earner, clerical staff, you might still be going to school. You might be trying to further your education to get better jobs and stuff like that. But for the elderly, they're out of the job market, and they're probably not getting more education, going to school and things like that. Okay, apparel, 3.1% for CPI-W, and then 2.5% for the CPI-E. And then we have other goods and services, 4.5% for CPI-W, and then 3.5% for CPI-E. So this is the breakdown. These are the categories. This is the shopping cart that I was talking about, and that is what they use to calculate COLA. So what's the bottom line? The bottom line is they need to make changes. So they need to change to the CPI-E. That would benefit people over time, not overnight, but over time it would benefit seniors more. It reflects senior spending habits a little bit better than the CPI-W. And I showed you on the list where they showed the different percentages, and that's the reason why CPI-E is a better fit. So what needs to happen? Talked about that. Congress needs to vote on this. They need to present a bill. So introduce a bill into Congress, put it through the hearings, and then go ahead and vote on it and pass it. That way, people will see a little bit of an increase to their COLA. This year, that projection at 2.5%, it'll probably be around there. And what that's going to mean is maybe an increase of roughly $50 for the average person receiving Social Security benefits, just like it was this year. So that's not going to be very significant. But if they could at least change the CPI-E over time, I think people will be in a better place. They also need to provide some different type of an increase for people receiving Social Security benefits. But this is a start. Now, one thing that I didn't mention, if they did change from the CPI-W to the CPI-E, of course, that is going to impact the Social Security trust funds. So that's one thing. Now, if they don't have any funding that's coming in, that means the trust funds will be depleted a little bit sooner. I don't know the calculation on that. If it's 6 months, if it's a year, I don't know. But they still need to make that change, because overall they need to reform Social Security. And there are 3 proposals that are out there right now that would reform Social Security and address this COLA, changing it from CPI-W to CPI-E. Social Security 2100 Act, of course, I talk a lot about that. Representative Larson's proposal, that would do it. And so they really need to start taking a strong look at reforming Social Security, and part of that reform should be changing from the CPI-W to CPI-E. If you guys have any questions, let me know in the comments below. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe for more, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Bye. So that's all we have for this video. Make sure if you guys want to send me an email, you can do that, david@thetecshow.com. Like the video, subscribe for more, and check out these videos over here for some more great content. Talk to you later. Bye.